A deaf pit bull had already been adopted and returned. She sat in that shelter for over a year, watching families come and go, and none of them chose her. Then, one afternoon, a stranger crouched down in front of her kennel, and what Mummy did next was seen by millions of people in less than 12 hours. This is her story. Mummy's name wasn't chosen randomly. The shelter staff gave it to her because of something they noticed almost immediately: the way she mothered every dog that came through those doors. She'd nuzzle the scared ones. She'd sleep curled around the anxious ones. For a dog who couldn't hear a single sound in the world, she had an extraordinary ability to sense what the animals around her were feeling. The irony of her name wasn't lost on anyone. Here was this gentle, nurturing soul who desperately wanted a family of her own, and she couldn't find one. Now, before we get to the moment that stopped the internet cold, there's something about Mummy's past you need to understand, because it makes what happened next about 10 times more remarkable. She hadn't just been waiting. She had tried. Someone had taken her home, and for reasons we'll get to in just a moment, they brought her back. Mummy is an American Pit Bull Terrier, and like so many of her breed, she carried the double weight of a stigma she never earned. Pit bulls are among the most misunderstood dogs in shelters across the country. They stay longer, they get passed over more, and when they come with an added layer of complexity, like being deaf, the odds get even steeper. Mummy was born without her hearing, which means she couldn't respond to verbal commands the way most dogs do. She operated entirely on visual cues, on touch, on energy. For someone who didn't know how to communicate with her, that gap could feel like a wall. And that's exactly what happened with her first adoption. The family loved her, or wanted to, but they weren't prepared. Deafness in dogs isn't a flaw, but it does require a different kind of patience, a different vocabulary, hand signals, vibrations, a willingness to meet the dog in her world instead of expecting her to enter yours. The family returned her not out of cruelty, but out of overwhelm, and Mummy went back to her kennel, back to the tile floor, back to watching the doors. Here's the part that the shelter volunteers say still makes them tear up when they talk about it. Mummy never stopped being sweet. She never shut down. Some dogs in long-term shelter stays develop what rescuers call kennel syndrome: anxiety, withdrawal, aggression born from hopelessness. Mummy didn't do that. She just kept showing up. Every morning, same dog, wagging tail, soft eyes, pure, unguarded hope. Over a year passed. Now here's where this story changes entirely, and you are not going to believe the detail that made this moment go viral. A family came to the shelter. They weren't specifically looking for a deaf dog. They hadn't done weeks of research on hearing-impaired pit bulls. They just walked in, open to whoever needed them most. A shelter worker suggested Mummy. She told them honestly about the deafness, about the return, about the year of waiting. And instead of hesitating, they crouched down. Right there on the shelter floor, they got low, at her level, the way you do when you want to say, without words, that you're not a threat. Mummy walked up to the father. She sniffed him. And then she did something that no one there had ever seen her do with a stranger. She lifted her paw and wrapped it around his leg and pressed her head against him. She just held on. The shelter worker who witnessed it said the whole room went quiet, not because it was cute, though it absolutely was, but because it felt like something much heavier than cute. It felt like recognition, like trust being extended by a creature who had every reason not to trust anymore. Someone had their phone out. The video was short, maybe 40 seconds, but it was posted that evening, and by the next morning, millions of people had watched Mummy hold on to that stranger's leg. The comments were flooded with people sharing their own stories of dogs they'd adopted from long stays. Rescuers messaged the shelter from across the country. Journalists called. The story got picked up by outlets in multiple languages, all from 40 seconds of a dog wrapping her paw around someone's leg on a concrete floor. And yes, the family took her home. But here's what doesn't always make it into the viral posts, the thing that matters most once the camera stops rolling. Adopting a deaf dog isn't a fairy tale ending. It's the beginning of a different kind of love story. In the months after Mummy went home, her new family learned American Sign Language commands adopted for dogs. They learned to stomp gently on the floor to get her attention. They learned that waking a deaf dog requires a soft touch near the shoulder, never a startle. They built a communication system between species, entirely without sound. And Mummy thrived. According to updates shared by the family online, she learned over a dozen hand signals in her first 3 months. She bonded fiercely with the children in the house. She started doing the things she'd always done at the shelter: pressing herself gently against anyone who seemed sad, offering herself as a comfort. There's a reason this story hit people so hard, and it's not just because it's adorable. It's because Mummy's year of waiting is something a lot of people quietly understand. The experience of being overlooked, of trying once and being sent back, of showing up anyway, every single day, with your heart still open. Mummy did it without bitterness, without walls. She just kept being herself until the right door opened. If you're watching this and you've been thinking about adopting, especially if you've ever scrolled past a senior dog, a deaf dog, a dog who's been in the system a long time, Mummy's story is the reason those animals are worth a second look. They're not broken. They've just been waiting for someone who speaks their language. Have you ever adopted an animal who'd been overlooked or returned? Drop their name and their story in the comments. We genuinely read every single one, and some of those stories have turned into videos right here on this channel. And if Mummy's story made you feel something today, hit that like button. It takes 1 second, and it truly helps us find more stories just like this one. Subscribe so you never miss the next one, because every week there's another mummy out there waiting to be seen.